And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Tom Fornelli. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcast on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe. Smash that like and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 Tailgate, where I am amazed and I am encouraged about the creativity that is rolling here, even in early July, because basically what has been built out is some fan fiction where there's an Ashley and a Brittany and a UCF and a Nebraska. And we're trying to talk about whether you're checking on your exes, you're trying to see what Brittany's doing. Of course, a lot of this having to do with Scott Frost reflecting on his time at Nebraska as he was at Big 12 Media Days as the representative of and the head coach for the UCF Knights. So we will be getting to Scott Frost in just a little bit, as well as more of our Big 12 Media Days takeaways. How about this, DK? Who's Ashley and who's Brittany?
I don't want to get involved in this.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know enough to know that those are actually fake. So I'm going to leave that to the tailgate.
Listen, we will let the tailgate keep rocking with it. No, we appreciate your creativity as always. Okay, so lots to get to today. Things that we have on the agenda. We are going to be looking at the Big 12 Media Days, what we've seen, what we are expecting. We are going to reveal our official Cover 3 Big 12 preseason media poll, because that's right, Big 12's too scared to come out and do an official media poll. They're too embarrassed by the fact that the 16th place team went all the way up and won the league. But we are fearless in the face of adversity, if nothing else. And so, yeah, we will be revealing before the end of this show the Cover 3 preseason media poll. We all filled out our own rankings. They will be mixed together. This will be our official Big 12 preseason media poll. Be sure to share it, pass it along everywhere. We will talk about Scott Frost, Texas Tech, Matt Campbell, and so much more. But first, before we get into Big 12, you hear that cooking, It is the hot seat rankings. Over at CBS Sports right now, we have a hot seat rating for all 136 FBS coaches. The ratings are on a 0 to 5 scale, 0 being untouchable. There are 28 coaches, by the way, who have fallen between 0 and 0.99. Now, 5 is win or be fired. So you can go from 0 all the way up to 5. There's one coach in a win or be fired. There are 8 between 4 and 4.99. You can start to see it right now. Let's take a look at the very top of the board for the hot seat rankings, where, again, our only coach in the number 1 spot is Sonny Cumbie of Louisiana Tech. But now we start to get to some significant ones. Brent Venables with the second highest hot seat ranking score, 4.67. Scroll a little bit lower, you'll see Mike Gundy, someone who was once a top 10 coach in our coach rankings. Brent Brennan at Arizona, Sam Pittman, Hugh Freeze, Brent Pry, Scott Satterfield. Lots of big names and big schools there. DK, why don't you, taking a look at these lists, these notables at the top of the hot seat rankings, what stands out to you?
The guy, I think one of them, you nailed it, was Mike Gundy, one of the longest tenured coaches in there, but coming off a 3-win season, winless in the Big 12. No surprise he's there, although I do wonder if he gets that sort of lifetime pass where I don't think he'd ever get fired. He might retire, which even was alluded to last year. I think that one's interesting. The Trent Dilfer one is not surprising at all, considering some of the comments he's made that have pissed off a lot of UAB fans there. The success hasn't been there on the field. We'll see if he does turn it around. And Brent Venables at the top, not surprised at all. Oklahoma's standard is up there. I think it's a must-win year for him. And then I will say this. I'm pleasantly surprised that Mike Norvell is not on there, because I would consider – I thought he would be higher on this list, so I'm kind of pleased that he's not.
Mike Norvell
related.
It's an educated voter base, though. Like, it's not like fans. It's like people who cover the sport know that, like, they're not going to pony up $50 million in all likelihood.
Right.
3.33 is Mike Norvell's average. That would put him in the pressure is mounting category. Does that feel right, Danny?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's pressure is mounting, because if they're around their win total, if they're 7-5, I think it gets insanely hot the next year, and he might be at the top of this list. But I do think Bud pointed out it's a great, the buyout does feel way too prohibitive for anything, barring another 2 or 3 win season, that there would be anything drastic.
I told Jack this. I said, like, for me, when I'm voting on this, I ended up way lower than everybody else on almost everything. So, like, my average was a 1.4, which was the lowest by like 0.3, which over 136 votes is a ton. And like in comparison, Richard Johnson was an average of 2.1. So he's like 50% higher per vote on me, right? But
so it's Richard. Hold on.
Richard is
everybody.
Richard wants to fire everybody.
So Richard is hotter. So he is Silky Johnson hate on his coach rankings with the hater of everyone, and he's also got everyone's seats hotter than everybody else of
Correct.
our 9 voters.
Yeah, 2.1. So Chip, you are a 1.9, so you were the second biggest hater on this.
Yep. Let's go.
And
Not a surprise.
High standard.
Cornelli, you were a 1.7, so you were the second lowest hater. So me and Tom are probably like, I don't know, could the money be used on players?
Bud and Tom are patient men. Bud and
Right.
Tom understand how it really works.
So but I will say, like I told Jack this, the win or be fired, like I think we should next year in the voting process, we should define that. Like, does that mean like meet your win total in Vegas? Win what? Like, because there's a whole lot of teams out there that I feel like could exceed expectations by a half game or a full game, and their fan base would still be really pissed.
I think that administrators and a large portion of season ticket holders and donors are not as tied to a win total. I think it is much more the games against your rivals, your conference games, your home games, the ones that really matter. That's where the math on a win total, you could exceed your win total by a half game or a full game, but still the fan base would be unsatisfied if you just looked totally outclassed against the best teams in your conference and not showing any signs of being able to close that gap. Like those things, I think, make it a little bit more difficult to tie specifically to the win total. Like Sonny Cumbie, win or be fired. That is the 5. He is the hottest seat. What is win at Louisiana Tech? 7-5?
Well,
you get into the Sun Belt, you're gone. Pretty much.
Like I think that's a good point, though. It's what is their win total at Louisiana Tech? Pulling up here.
4.5. But at the same time, like you're also like in a way the coach is responsible for that win total. You know what I mean? So
like the roster that you put together is going to
Yeah.
factor into what puts it there.
It's 6.5 heavily juiced under.
Like I just think that with Sonny Cumbie, like if they don't get off to a good start, he's probably the first coach fired. I think that's just the way most people kind of feel about the situation. Like
I mean, are they going to the Sun Belt? Does it matter? Does that impact this? Like so far, I guess they don't have the votes to go to the Sun Belt.
Yeah, that's what I was reading. Yeah. Well, like they were calling it like the ULM bailout or something.
I think maybe ULM doesn't want them in.
Yeah,
which would make sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. That happens from time to time. Okay, so what about our getting warmer category? Notables here: Joe Moorhead at Akron, Billy Napier, Luke Fickell. We got, and then of course you just had the changeover. Mark Carney taking over at Kent State. A couple of these situations when I was filling out my ballot, even if a coach has only been there a year or 2 years, sometimes the situation that put them in that place, you understand that they need to show something because the investment's not enough. The investment is heavy in Luke Fickell. Tom, do you agree with the 3.67 in terms of where he sits in the hierarchy?
Yeah, I think that makes plenty of sense. I think that there's a situation where, I mean, it depends. Like Chris McIntosh, the athletic director there, I think he's a very smart guy. He's the one who brought Fickell in. I think he understands the situation. I think he is more invested in Fickell than maybe a lot of, outside people are as far as like putting together these ballots. And I think that unless things go terribly, terribly wrong, he's probably fine because I think McIntosh also understands that schedule that they have to play this year is very, very difficult. So I think that there's a certain, like maybe if you're sitting there looking at it, you're thinking Wisconsin's got to win 8 or 9 games or Fickell's gone.
Oh.
I think that just getting to a bowl game would probably be more than enough to keep him for another year.
Yeah, they're like 5.5 minus 180 to the under.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's implying like 5 and 7 is a lot more likely than 6-6. If they make a bowl game, that's a pretty good accomplishment if the teams on their schedule are what we think they are, obviously.
Yeah.
Like 4 to 7.5, slightly juice under.
It is difficult for me to imagine Luke Fickell being fired either during or after this season. I think if things don't go well, then he enters next year on one of the hottest seats in the country. But I think Fickell will still, like, when we're at Big Ten Media Days next summer, we'll still be talking to Luke Fickell. That's my read.
Can I introduce a take here?
Yes.
That I have been sitting on. I didn't put this on Twitter. It is something that somebody brought it up to me the other day. He said, dude, with all of these guys getting paid a large part of their money up front because they wanted to avoid the clearinghouse, if you're a guy and you got a check for $800,000, are you going to give a damn about a $1,500 weekly check in rev share if things are going bad? Like the whole, like, oh, they're going to still play hard. They got to follow these rules to get their cut of the rev share. That's really like de minimis compared to what you have upfront money. So I do think some of these teams and a lot of these big schools, they paid 80, 90, or in some cases 100% of the guaranteed money up front before the year. It doesn't have to be paid back. I'm not saying like you quit the team type stuff, but like, you know, if you're just still on the roster, you already got your cheddar. I don't think there's a whole lot of carrot to be held out there. So I do think that we have real like possibility this year for some of these teams to go into absolute quit mode more than they did in prior years.
Totally agree. I don't even think it has anything to do with the newer style. That was the thing that really bummed me out when I went from college to the pro. When you are when you're a professional, which our players are all up there in college football now, is human nature. If things are going off the rails, I'm still getting paid. Like, just give me my check. You know, as long as my check's clearing, there's not as much desperation. There's not as much, you know, I'm just playing for the love of the game. I'm just playing for, you know, any other reason than it's a paycheck. And when you get that, you do lose some of that effort. And when things go, I think that was what happened to Florida State last year. They had so many players that they were paying through the portal. Once you hit that adversity, all of a sudden you find out what type of character you've got. And then once you start seeing those professionals, those hired guns come in and they're still getting paid, the desire to really salvage a season for a program that has a long history of success, it just doesn't exist. It's just not there because you've only been there a year, you know, in a lot of cases.
All right. So let me ask you, Bud, the Venn diagram of hot seat situations and big spenders, is that significant? Or do you think we'll even have coaches that are not on the hot seat because of the way they have constructed their roster, potentially facing those same kind of challenges in terms of keeping the locker room together? Because this does piggyback and is kind of like the next evolution of something that you suggested in terms of the character of the locker room at different conferences and different schools last season. Is this, am I following your thread correctly here?
Yes.
Okay.
I think you're really nailing it there, Chip. I mean, this is a weird time in the sport. I think it's a difficult time that we have to go through to probably spit out on the other end with something that's a little bit more organized and structured, and like the trade-off for the money is a little more control for the schools eventually. But right now, we still don't have a whole lot of that control, and so it will depend. Like, is this coach a guy that really keeps a locker room together? I think if you're an AD, you probably need to look at that pretty seriously. Like, if you're a coach who's having a poor season for a roster that was paid up front, and a lot of guys who would have the option to jump after this year potentially, and you're able to keep it, close, I think that matters something.
Very interesting.
Also, like, isn't a Mark to Quinn's question in the chat? Mark Stoops should be close to the top of this list. I think that's another buyout type thing. Like,
yeah,
you're Kentucky, you're not spending as much of your rev share, I don't anticipate, on football as other SEC schools, and you already suck compared to most of the SEC in terms of tradition, ability to acquire talent, history, track record, fan base, football wise, etc. So, like, who are you hiring? And we found the buyout was what, like low 30s, high 20s, I think it was.
Right.
That's a lot of money still, especially if you're not really a football school.
But you did say who are you going to go hire? Don't you think that John Sumrall being out there as a former player, former coach there, like that increases the seat heat?
Well, but I don't know that Sumrall would take Kentucky. I think if you're Sumrall, you got to be smart and you got to realize one of Auburn, LSU, Oklahoma, or Florida are going to open this year. Mathematically, it's almost impossible that they don't.
Also, Scott Frost would be telling him not to take that job.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you learned anything, don't take the wrong job.
Like, if you're good enough this year at Tulane to still be considered for an SEC job, think you got to realize like I can probably get a better one.
Also, to provide a little bit of perspective here, one thing that we do have, so the great Dodd father, Dennis Dodd, he sort of authored the hot seat rankings for many years. And, he was the one, we cannot replace Dennis Dodd. We can only replace his expertise in the composite with our 9 voting members for the hot seat rankings. But going into last season, after an offseason in which Mark Stoops was a legitimate candidate for Texas A&M, his hot seat ranking was a 1 out of 5. His hot seat ranking right now is a 3.56. So the disappointment of last year, the outlook for where is this going to get better, all of that is factored into why all of us have increased our rating, because it was looking like Mark Stoops was, one of the best coaches at maxing out what Kentucky football can be. And now, after a couple missteps in terms of roster building and in terms of the way the season played out, now the heat is ramping up. So, hey, just like Mike Norvell, pressure is mounting. Danny, Mike Norvell was a 0. Mike Norvell was considered untouchable. But then you go 2-10, now you're up into the 3s, into the pressure is mounting. So that's how quickly this thing can change in terms of the hot seat analysis.
I think there are schools too. I think there's entire conferences. I think the SEC are always one bad season away from, the hot seat. And I think at a lot of programs, you're one bad season away from being on the hot seat.
I would agree with that.
Well, also, if you have the most historic collapse in history of college football 1 year to the next, then like your rating could shoot up, as Norvell shows.
When win total drops by 11, your hot seat ranking then will have a multiplier of it's inverse.
Where's Joey McGuire on this?
Lubbock, Texas.
I was going to bring this up. Like
2.33.
What did I have him as? I think I had him at
Shahan Jaraja yesterday. We were on set, and he said and he was the one who did. It was a great piece. Go check it out on CBSSports.com. Went out there to Lubbock, talked to so many people. Yesterday we were doing HQ, and he said the expectation is anything less than 10-2 is a disappointment.
Really?
I could see that. I mean,
I could see it
put
too.
a lot of money into this team.
Yeah, but like the portal wasn't that good. Like now they got a lot of players who upgraded their roster. But like I don't think they got a lot of players who were like serious playoff run good.
Yeah, but the money
that's how we look at it. If I put like a bunch of money in there, yeah,
but it takes that much money just to incrementally get better if you're Texas freaking Tech.
Yeah, no, I get it, but I don't like Texas billionaires are sometimes known for not being the most patient people out there.
Now, look, the schedule is really easy. Okay, like Texas Tech, if they go under their win total, which is 8.5, then I think I'd be like, man. For that kind of money, we can find a lot of guys on this podcast who can go 8-4 when you're out spending the Big 12 by that much. But 10-2 is like that. That's a leap up. Like they're favored in what?
You save the day is going to be a real tough game, though.
If we scroll this,
but their 3 toughest games are all on the road, which is really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Here's something to consider. Like I did this, and this is just getting into this will piss off Big 12 fans because it gets into what we say all the time. I just went through and looked the other day because I was working on another story. If you flipped all the results of every 1-score game in Big 12 conference play last year, do you know what Texas Tech's conference record would have been?
4-8,
2-7,
right? Yeah.
Oh no. Okay, so yeah.
It was a lot of smoke and mirrors. Texas Tech was not that good last year.
Arizona State would have only been 4-5.
I mean, I'll tell you what I saw.
Kansas had been like 3rd in the league.
Huh?
I think Kansas would have been like 3rd in the league.
Kansas would have been tied for 3rd with BYU and Utah at 6-3. Baylor and Colorado would have both been 7-2.
I need to get a life. There's no way I should know that we have Kansas would be 3rd in the league if you flip their one.
Well, listen, Ashley and Brittany could both coach that team to 8-4. So
I mean, like legitimately. And the thing is, there are some scenarios that are plausible here with Texas Tech. For instance, your quarterback who's always injured. Like I was thinking about this morning, like, did they go get somebody who is just a decent backup who can win you a bottom half Big 12 game if Morton is dinged up again? Because he is always getting hurt.
They did. Hold on. Speaking of Texas Tech, where did they fall on the Cover 3 preseason media poll? Big 12 ain't doing no media poll. We got you with the official media poll. So we get into Big 12 Media Days takeaways, starting with our rankings and more. Next.
The most original musical ever, is now streaming on Paramount Plus.
I'm just giving the people what they want.
Better Man absolutely sizzles from start to finish. Better Man, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. The name that I was reaching for, Bud, was Mitch Griffiths, the former Wake Forest quarterback. But I know that their redshirt freshman Hammond is a good. He was running first string through most of spring practice because, to your point, Baron Morton, after another shoulder surgery, was out for all of spring practice. He is expected to make a full recovery. Okay. Are you guys ready? All four of us submitted our ballots for an official Cover 3 preseason Big 12 media poll. And here are the results. Number 1, Arizona State Sun Devils, average ranking of 1.75. Number 2, the Kansas State Wildcats, average ranking 2.25. The Baylor Bears, the official podcast of Sawyer Robertson and Sikkim, they check in at number 3. Utah at 4. And then the Texas Tech Red Raiders, who, if they fall below 10-2, it will be a disappointment. Cover 3's got them 5th in our rankings. TCU checking in at 6. Iowa State at 7. Kansas Jayhawks down at 8. BYU, more on them later. They check in at 9. Cincinnati at 10. Houston at 11. Colorado at 12. With a very rock solid, just everyone's got them right there in that position. Oklahoma State coming in at 13, West Virginia 14, UCF 15, and Arizona at 16. We've got a little bit of a tie there. UCF and Arizona both coming in at 14.5. I mean, we all had to fill out our own rankings. Tom, any thoughts looking at the composite now?
No, I mean, it's an impossible conference to predict. Like, there's no real wrong answer. Any one of us could have picked any one of these teams to finish in first, and there'd probably been a pretty defensible argument for most of them. I think some of them we would look at each other side-eyed. But, like, what surprises me more than anything is the gap. But I guess with only 4 voters, and we're kind of all similar thinking in a lot of ways, there's going to be some gaps at the top and the bottom. But I don't know. I thought it would be closer at the top than it is.
Would you take even money if I gave you everybody past Kansas to win the league?
Wait, hold on. Everybody.
I have literally taken everybody to win.
If I gave you the bottom, if I gave you BYU, Cincy, Houston, Colorado State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, UCF, Arizona, and I'll even sweeten the pot and throw Iowa State in.
Ooh.
You take even money on that? Because I had Iowa State 8th. I don't really buy them.
Again, I will not, because I literally have money on every team to win the Big 12.
Would you take 3-1?
Oh, maybe 3-1.
It's like we say anybody can win this, but I don't know.
That was one of my bold predictions in
Last year
May.
we would have been wrong. Obviously, Arizona State came through.
I think Arizona State, Kansas State is a really good top team. I mean, I think the way that we've got this tiered in the composite is just how I see it. Like, there are 2 really, really good teams. One has probably a few more questions than the other. Then we get into bounce back Utah, surging Baylor. I think that this will not be. I don't think we're going to enter the 3rd week of November with 7 teams who have a viable, ability to be able to win the Big 12 title. I think that there will be a little bit more tiered structure this year.
Am I the high man on Utah? I had them 1.
Yeah, you were the only first place vote.
Okay.
Looking back on it, though, I'm doing an HQ hit right after the show, and we're previewing Utah. I might put them higher based on the schedule. It is incredibly favored. The Devin Dampier, I mean, it should bring stability. He could be a little bit of a wild card, but if they just get adequate quarterback play, I think you've got to trust Kyle Whittingham's history. But I was kind of out on where is the psyche of Kyle Whittingham, with him already announcing the succession plan. Like, sometimes that works great. Sometimes it's an indication maybe you have a foot out the door. So I was a little bit tepid, but if you just went on schedule, their toughest games are all at home. Like, the non-conference, UCLA early isn't too bad. I mean, they could win that game. They could lose. It doesn't really matter. But I totally get why you would be bullish on Utah, Bud.
I mean, they were plus 300 to win the league last year, plus 220 to make the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Do we think Dampier is a downgrade from Healthy Rising?
Yes. Or no, downgrade? No, I think
Right. I mean, like, so the logic was basically, hey, you have a team that's built way better than all of the other Big 12 teams on the line of scrimmage coming over from, now granted, it was a historically good Pac-12 in 2023, and that was Utah's maiden voyage in the league, and that was, tougher. But, like, I don't think that logic was faulty. Their quarterback just banged his hand on a Gatorade cart, and they didn't have a backup. I thought you made a pretty inspired hire with Beck coming in as OC, and Dampier seems to make a lot of sense. I don't know. I'm just kind of like, and you can tell me Dampier was feasting on Mountain West defenses. So was John Mateer.
And he's going to lead. Right? He's going to lead Oklahoma back to the glory this year.
People are like, oh, look, Mateer matched what Cam Ward did. I'm like, the hell he did. Cam Ward beat on teams that were actually not really like the best Pac-12 we ever saw. John Mateer played a Mountain West schedule last year, and he sucked in the Power 5 games for the most part.
But Dampier did have a little bit of a turnover issue, and that's something that Cam Rising did not provide. Like the stability, that's where I think there's still a chance it could be a downgrade. And we're talking about a quarterback that was at USC where they went for 2 and they won the game. And he's like, I want, and Kyle Whitting, this might have been 2 years ago when he said, I'm going to put the ball in the hands of my quarterback every single time. Like that type of faith and confidence in your quarterback, it's going to take some time to get that with Dampier.
But I think the OC has that, though. Tim Beck has it because he's coming with him from New Mexico. So, and I think Whittingham's going to leave that to his offensive coordinator. I will say when it comes to our polls, let's not forget, like if the top 4 teams in the Big 12 last year were all 7-2. So it's like I've got Utah 4th in my poll, but they might be tied for first. Yeah.
Right. It really was. You could just throw a dart at the dartboard with the top of this league.
So the key number for Utah is 51,444. That is the total attendance of a full Rice-Eccles Stadium, because for Utah, their toughest games are on their home turf. And if you're a team that's fighting for a bowl or a team at the bottom of the conference, you want your toughest games to be away and you want your coin flips to be at home. But if you're Utah, a Big 12 title contender, those toughest games are your coin flip games. So that means Texas Tech has to come to Salt Lake City. Arizona State has to come to Salt Lake City. Kansas State has to come to Salt Lake City. The muss, that student section, that environment is nasty. So I like Utah, as you saw in the graphic, if you're watching at youtube.com/cover3. I've got them as a top 3, but Tom, to your point, top 3 means I still expect them to be competing for the Big 12 title. Like that is that top 4, I think, are all teams that I would say, I know the odds are not going to, it would not work with our resident mathematician and attorney, but like if you could say these 4 versus the field, then I'm taking those 4 because I feel pretty confident that that's the top tier in the Big 12 this season.
I totally agree. I like looking at this. I'm really just focused on the top half of all these, because if you could tell me with certainty how the bottom half of the Big 12 is going to shake out, like you shouldn't be on this podcast. You should just, go live on an island. I'm a little. Can I pick your brain on TCU?
Sure.
Like Iowa State over TCU is interesting to me. Kind of feel like, is it just we don't like Sonny Dykes compared to Matt Campbell?
I mean, Iowa State was playing for the Big 12 title last year, and they've got to replace some wide receivers, but they've still got a great quarterback, and I find it interesting the way that they have really invested in retention. Not that the biggest programs in the country are beating down their door to try and pluck Iowa State players, but they have at least decided to turn their focus there. And Mr. Matt Campbell, 5-star hearts. Remember when that was a thing? Like I think that I've got a little bit more confidence in sort of the year-over-year building. TCU's probably got a higher ceiling, but I don't know if the consistency I'm as confident in.
Are you full Dillingham, Chip? Is retention more important than recruiting?
In the Big 12?
That was one of the quotes from yesterday that I was just kind of like, I don't know.
If you end up with an NFL quarterback prospect on your roster for Michigan State, it damn sure is. But if you don't, then no.
It's like, who are you retaining if you're not recruiting, Ken?
I wasn't out on Iowa State. I did have TCU right above them. Iowa State is a program that I believe, and I took a lot of heat on this based on the last time Iowa State was coming off the 9-win season. I believe it was 5-6 years ago. And that was when Matt Campbell was the hot coach then. And they had lost some players. I just feel like they're a cyclical program that once every 3 or 4 years, they get the upperclassmen right, they get the development right, and then they kind of have to reset and could do it all again. And they're coming off an incredible year. Best year that they've had, under Matt Campbell, 11 wins, phenomenal year. I don't trust the program itself historically. It feels like it's been one that you kind of have the cycles. They hit it last year.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they do have Rocco Beck back, who I like a ton, but to me, they've got to prove that they can consistently keep it there, especially in this era too, when you do lose some players. But hey, they're taking pay cuts to come back. They've got the mentality to do it. I just question some of their roster talent versus the other teams in the top of the Big 12.
Hey, listen, and just remember, and I'm going to say this maybe at a little bit of a lower volume than my normal voice so that not everybody hears us, but remember, Iowa State spring game playbook for their FCS game. Okay, so they're going to come back from doing Farmageddon overseas, and they're going to play North Dakota, and they do not care about winning that game by anything more than 1 point. We're going to get a big old FCS line on that board, and I tell you, and it's not even North Dakota State. It's just old regular North Dakota, and they are just going to be running half-back dive and 4-3 stack, or 3-3-5 since it's Iowa State. It is going to be spring game-ass playbook to try to win that game 14-3. So just, we'll file that one away for when we get into the locks a little bit later in the year. Tom, you mentioned Kenny Dillingham's comments about retention and recruiting. Well, now that we've gotten here, did you have any large sort of or deeper takeaways on the way that Scott Frost presented himself and handled his first real time of media scrutiny since leaving Nebraska?
I will start by saying that I hope Scott Frost is genuinely happy back at UCF, and I hope everything works out for him there and he gets back to what he was doing before. I also think that there is some revisionist history going on about what happened at Nebraska. I think that there were other problems at Nebraska that weren't, and you know what? Maybe it plays into what he was saying, like going, quote unquote, you can't go home again, or, you can't, like maybe going home again. Sometimes if you live somewhere at a certain part of your life and you go back to that area, like your life, like think about where you guys in college, think about who you were. All right. Like, so Chip, you move back to Chapel Hill. Your first instincts are, well, what do I usually do when I'm here?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe there was an aspect for Scott Frost going back to Lincoln, got him into some old habits from when he was still in Lincoln that led to some problems with the football program. And maybe in that sense, he took the wrong job. He went, he regrets going. He should have never left UCF. But at the same time, I don't think that he was forced to do it. I don't think anybody put a gun to his head and said you have to leave UCF for Nebraska.
I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I can't believe he said it. I just can't believe he said it. It's such a bad look. I mean, I hate for it for somebody who was an incredible player there, who was a legend in school history to now burn this many bridges. And maybe it was already done because of the way things unfolded with him as a coach. We played back some sound from him this morning on the radio show because we had him on in December, like right when he took the job. And we asked him, what did you learn in your time at Nebraska? And it was the perfect answer. He took ownership of it. He talked about, maybe doing things differently. In this, it just feels like you're not taking any ownership, that a lot of it was on you. Like it's such a bad look. And I like Scott Frost. I hope he turns things around. Like there's a bunch of coaches who have not had success, have had personal issues, and have been able to do it. I just think it was such a bad look. I'm actually just surprised that he said it out loud, because I do think there's some truth into it, but I don't think it was take the wrong job. I think maybe it was too early for you to take that job. Like you weren't prepared. He only had 2 seasons as a head coach at UCF before they were in the Big 12 to kind of prove himself. And I think I've told you guys the story before. That season, I was calling a game early against Maryland. And in the production meeting, we're sitting with Scott Frost. And I asked him about his name coming up for the next level jobs. And I said, do you think you're ready? And he goes, I wasn't ready for this job. I just figured it out. And he said, I'll figure it out as it goes. And like looking back on that, it kind of resonates. I'm like, oh, he wasn't ready for UCF, but it just kind of worked out. He had this perfect season and it worked great. And then he kind of took that same mindset to Nebraska. I'll just figure it out, without really understanding what it was going to take or a plan to deal with what it means to be the head coach at Nebraska. So I do agree with him. Like, I think it might have been the wrong job for him, but it has nothing to do with Nebraska. It has everything to do more with Scott Frost.
I'm just like searching for I just don't think this coach's that bad. I don't know.
You ask Nebraska fans that. I mean, they look at like it's an unwinnable job. You can't win a national championship there. I think Matt Rule is going to get asked this question. I think he's going to take a shot at Scott Frost when he's asked about it at Big Ten Media Days. I think they take incredible offense to it.
He started it by saying, I said I wouldn't leave here unless it was someplace you could win a national title. So right off the bat, he's saying, well, I went to Nebraska and you can't win a national title there. That's a great way to start going about your own.
He won one there under old rules and could snap. Now, granted, like, he won as a player, not as a coach. They also got away with some wild stuff. Like Ivans and I were working on some stuff at Future 50 recently, and just had to kill like 7 hours for Wi-Fi and upload videos and stuff and get work done. We're kind of just going like, remember some dudes. Like, you remember Lawrence Phillips? And I pulled it. It's like, holy cow! Like, nowadays with social media, there's no way any school lets that guy play. I know Scott Frost remembers Lawrence Phillips.
Maybe
somebody. Yeah, I mean, Lawrence Phillips is pretty good. I'm pretty sure somebody would find a room for him. I was
gonna say, I think Lawrence is on the team somewhere.
Yeah, he's gonna be able to find a way somewhere. All right, so why is it that bad? I don't know if it's that bad. I think it's notable, and I think it's notable because it gets a reaction. It gets a reaction from one of the larger fan bases and one of the more passionate fan bases in college football. Have they competed for a national championship in the 21st century? Not in a long time, but like it is still, in terms of the culture of college football, a significant fan base, a significant program. And he kind of threw dirt on him. So that's why it was a choice to be able to frame it that way.
Also, it's not even exactly what he said as much as the reality of the situation that he's kind of ignoring. In that, what was Nebraska's record in one-score games under Scott Frost? How many times did they blow games in the fourth quarter because of bad decision-making by the coaching staff that didn't really seem to have it all together?
That'd be 5-22, Tom, is the record you're looking for. 5-22 one-score games.
Like Danny was saying, at some point, you got to look in the mirror and say, damn, my team was 5-22 in one-score games and blew a lot of winnable games late. I wonder whose fault that was. Not mine.
I'm very hurt by the way that I'm very disappointed with the way that things went. I think there was a lot of good opportunity for learning and growth, and I'm very happy to, be back in Orlando, be trying to recapture the magic that we had when we were undefeated national champions, according to the Collie Index. That kind of stuff, just something along those lines.
That said, I appreciate him not saying that.
I bet you if you ask Gus Malzahn, though, what he's been kind of the comments he's been making about how, like, UCF not getting the full rev share, like in your league, was a big detriment type stuff. Like, do we think Frost would have maintained his level of success at UCF had he stayed? I do not.
Well, it was
Malzahn's correct about how much of a hindrance that was.
Well, and to Danny's point, it was 6-7, 13-0 gone.
Yep.
It was a true like sun run, just like something was going to happen to snap back the other way.
At the time, he was one of the hottest names in the coaching carousel. Florida State was interested. Florida was interested. Who else? There was other schools that were in the mix. Like, it wasn't just Nebraska.
And also, like, there was so much going on off the field. That's maybe that's why a lot of people don't understand what the reaction is. But if you have an idea of what was happening, that wasn't just the football aspect of it.
Like accountability is desired from some boosters and season ticket holders out there in Lincoln. Yeah, I could definitely see that. All right, we will get you set for Wednesday's Big 12 action, plus some comments from the tailgate and so much more next.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle. Remarkable! To amuse you is my only wish.
The glory is yours, not mine.
Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R, now streaming on Paramount Plus.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, we are thrilled to be able to let you know that we are a nominee once again in the Best Sports Podcast category in the People's Choice Podcast Awards. We appreciate all that you do for us, and we hope that you enjoy our show enough to nominate us so that we can advance to the final round. To nominate the Cover 3 podcast, go to podcastawards.com/app/sign up and scroll down to the Best Sports category. The whole process is only going to take you about 60 seconds, about as long as it's taken me to read this. And we've included the link at the top of the episode description to make it even easier for you to go show your support for us. Nominate the Cover 3 podcast in the best sports podcast category in the People's Choice Podcast Awards. We thank you in advance. All right. Anything else from yesterday's Big 12 Media Days that stood out?
Let me ask you this. Does the Big 12 need Texas Tech to work?
No.
Okay.
How so, though?
Like
you mean compete
Big
for
12
national
does not have
titles?
any
Or?
legitimate national title contenders.
Correct.
Mhm.
There are only one team in the Big 12 that is spending at the rate you would need to potentially acquire that talent, right? Like Texas Tech's about to sign a crazy good 27 as well, and they're like they seem to be willing to spend 50 or 60 or whatever it is per year. And I get it makes sense with all like the development they're trying to do around Lubbock, but does the Big 12 as a conference need that to happen? Because eventually, like if you don't have anybody that is considered serious for the national title, I do think you get looked at as kind of like a non-competing league. Like you're competitive in the league, but not for the big prize.
I think you need more than Texas Tech.
Well, it depends on what you're looking like. I hear what you're saying. I mean, and I know we're going to get in this a little bit tomorrow about Brett Yormark's comments, but he did say, we're going to have 2 teams in the playoff. They need somebody to have an 11-1 type regular season, multiple and then have an upset in the Big 12 championship, kind of like the ACC, how they got 2 in last year, in order for them to do that. So I guess from that perspective, yeah, you need Texas Tech to be that and then some, but it could be Utah, it could be somebody else. So, and I don't think it's a bad thing to have Arizona State be the torchbearer. I mean, Kenny Dillingham just about a month ago said we can be the Clemson of the Big 12. Like, I think they just need somebody to step up, or multiple teams to showcase that they can win. And they were right there against Texas. I mean, it did take, what was it, a 4th and 14 from Quinn Ewers touchdown pass, or else they win that game. Now, would they have won it all? No, but I think they proved more than a worthy candidate to be on the national stage and compete against anybody.
And they were also right there against Mississippi State, right there against Texas State, and like right there in the loss column against Cincinnati. Like, can you consistently win the Big 12? Maybe, but like Clemson also wins playoff games too, competes for the bigger prize.
I think they do. I think that.
Does it have to do with the spending though? Because I was pushing back because just because you're spending doesn't mean that you are going to get the respect. Texas 8-4 spends as much as anybody, but they're still Texas 8-4.
Yeah, but they play a much more difficult schedule.
I think that if you look at how sports have worked, we all say we want parity, but the fact of the matter is, throughout history, there's always been the dominant teams, and it's those dominant teams that kind of drive and bring eyes to your leagues, to your sports. Like in the NBA right now, there's more parity than ever. Like it's been 8 straight years of a different champion. Yet all you see every single year is the ratings in the NBA are dropping. The ratings in the NBA are dropping. It's like people want the Miami Heat. They want the Warriors. They want the dynasty. You look at the NFL, they want the Patriots. They want the Chiefs. If the Big 12 continues down the path that it is, I don't think it can grow. I think it can exist. Like, I don't think it's going to die unless there's more fundamental changes, which we'll get into tomorrow, which is something I would wonder about if I'm Brett Yormark and I want the 5-11 model so badly. But unless they have a program that kind of rises to the top and becomes a dominant force that draws those eyeballs, they're always going to be a second-tier television product, because we can talk about how much we love parity, and I do. I enjoy watching the Big 12 because I have no idea what's going to happen. But you compare the television ratings for Big 12 games compared to any Big 10 game, where even if it's crappy teams, they usually don't do nearly as well, at least in relation to what the game should be doing ratings-wise. So I don't know. Actions speak a lot louder than words, and the actions tend to say people want dominant teams, either to root for or against them.
And they had it before Oklahoma and Texas left.
Right.
And why couldn't it be Arizona State or Utah, who we thought, I thought Utah was going to come in and be at the top of the league for foreseeable future, and they had, a subpar season. Why does it have to be Texas Tech because of the spending?
Yes, I think you have to overspend so much to get a 5-star kid to say yes to Texas Tech instead of Georgia or Ohio State. I think Texas Tech is getting for 50 what Ohio State could get for like 38. They're probably paying like a 20 or 30% premium to get kids to come to Lubbock, which I know they want it to be cool, but it's not. And like if you guys have been there, I actually have. I mean, it costs a lot. Like I think it takes a lot of money to put that together. Now, if Arizona State or Utah all of a sudden has that, like if you gave Utah BYU's money, then you might be cooking with gas right there.
Yeah, I was about to say BYU spending.
But they also have the mission thing. And can you guys name me like the BYU guys who've gone on a mission and then have been studs? Like that is a problem, I think, for development. The track record it's not a guarantee you'll be bad, but I do think it's a hindrance or a potential obstacle to overcome.
But it also can but this isn't going to help you in the top tier.
I do think
there's a luxury of getting mature, like older, you have 24, 25-year-olds. I know everybody's had them since, COVID, but once that kind of goes away, you do have that advantage kind of going. Didn't Ryder Lyons, is he doing a 1-year mission? Is that what he's doing?
He's doing a
one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right. So what if Texas Tech doesn't work? And by the way, Texas Tech working, you are suggesting something that rarely gets touched in the Texas Tech football history. In the long history of Texas Tech football, we've got a Mike Leach pop in 2008, and none of these other coaches who have come through have been able to recreate that magic. I mean, I don't want to say that the future of the Big 12 rests on Texas Tech's player spending resulting in 11-win seasons. Like I think that's disrespectful to the other 15 institutions who all each have their own levels of success and goals and ability to be able to go out there where they can put together a 10-win season without spending as much as a Georgia or an LSU or an Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think Yormark thinks? I mean, he clearly is in this catch-22 where you cannot agree to the auto bids because you are literally stipulating in the contract, yeah, our league is inferior by half. Like that's the reason he can't do it. I think he's absolutely full of it with this idea that he expects to average more than 2 teams in the playoff.
He's only
in the current format.
He's only guaranteeing 2 this year. That's all we're only starting small.
Well, I mean, now that they don't have a preseason poll and nobody's at a disadvantage, there's a real
right.
chance.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
I would love for Brett to explain how that worked.
Yeah, I mean, to Bud's point earlier, it wasn't Arizona State being overlooked because of where they were in the preseason poll. It was Arizona State being overlooked because of the narrow margins and the results of the first 5-6 weeks of the season before they got healthy and caught fire.
And also they were 3-9 the year before.
Yeah. Let's see. Anything else from yesterday that stood out?
Did you guys play the game?
Oh,
no.
I got a quick one for you.
Yeah.
Joey McGuire calling out LSU and calling out scheduling and saying we'd love that. He was talking about Brian Kelly said they want a Big Ten matchup, and Joey McGuire says no, we want a home and home with LSU. Like call us up. I do like that.
Yeah.
Do you think it? I love it too. Do you think it changes though? Because they need to change the narrative. If they do have those non-conference matchups, will they make that much of a difference? Do you think they would help the perception? I mean, you have to win them first of all. But like if you go 2-2 with if it's Texas Tech and Iowa State and Arizona State and whoever, and they go 2-2, does that change anything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
it depends on when it is. Like in the playoff or regular season. Also, why would LSU agree to a home and home? If I'm LSU, I'm like, we'll play a 2-for-1. We're a much bigger brand than you are. Like, I don't think our fans are real excited to see Texas Tech come to Tiger Stadium.
The only thing the reason I asked,
a bottom third game on an LSU schedule annually.
I do like all this conversation about, the scheduling. It did no favors to Florida State to beat LSU. Twice. It didn't help them. It didn't help Oregon, who's scheduled to Auburn, lost that game. but that they had won the Pac-12 that year as that was their second loss, kept them out of the playoff. That was a 4 team, so maybe it changes some.
It changes now a
But
lot.
do you think it does change now?
Yeah, because now there are at large and there's multiple at large bids, and that's what they're going to use to compare you. Like if you're both 2 losses, like you're both sitting there at 10-2, but one of you beat LSU and the other one beat Northwestern, who's going to get the edge?
Yeah.
I hope so.
I think that
It's going to be those cusp teams. It's going to be the 12, 13, 14 teams, that are right there on the edge.
But that's all most teams can compete for, Danny. Like most of them are competing for a top 5 spot.
Yeah, no, definitely not. Not in this current environment right now. We got no update on Jake Retzlaff. I think Cover 3 maintains its stance. We are not expecting him to take a snap for the Cougars this year. Is that correct?
Can he transfer? Is there a window?
Yeah, I think
for
he's a
him?
graduate. Isn't he a graduate? Is that how he can do it?
Can he transfer as a walk-on?
There is also, guys, there's a third transfer portal window that the NCAA passed in the last 2 weeks.
Right.
I don't know
But
if that
is
applies
for
here.
like designated non-scholarship guys, right?
Yeah.
I am curious if we're going to get to a point where it's like if you're a non-revenue share player. Because I heard the Nebraska AD on what podcast is? I was doing some yard work. I can scroll down. Hold on, guys. What is that? Sports Wise. It's like a sports law podcast, but the Nebraska AD Troy Denham was on, and I thought I heard him say that like 50 or 60 of their football players get rev share.
Iowa State coach Matt Campbell said that they are not maxing out their rev share right now.
So it does become a question. I bet you we will have a legal challenge where if you are a non-rev share player, you can transfer before the season.
Like in fall camp kind of time?
I think you should. I mean, yeah. Like if you're not going to pay me, can I go somewhere that's going to pay me?
Yeah, it's possible. Getting set for Wednesday's schedule. We'll have Arizona, Colorado, Houston, Kansas, Oklahoma State, TCU, Utah, and West Virginia at the Big 12 Media Days. More reaction in full tomorrow before we jump into the big old bag of mail, which, by the way, Spotify comments. We have loved reaching out to our growing audience on Spotify. The Spotify comments are under each episode. We've still got some in the big old bag of mail from last week that we'll get started with this week, but continue to drop those in there. We'll continue to grab them. Of course, the 5-star big old bag of mail, always rocking and rolling. We just want to make sure that we give our Spotify listeners a chance to communicate with the show as well. I saw that. Listen, Willie Fritz. This is a little bit early. Willie Fritz has already been up at the mic. Willie Fritz said they've clocked Connor Wegman at 21 miles an hour on the GPS.
Is he riding a scooter?
Yeah, so that's interesting because last year, if we go back to that game day thing where he started talking all funny when they had a magician up in front of the team there at A&M, and he was wearing like the compression shirt, I was like, oh, he's kind of fat. Like he's built like me. I'm getting off my Texas A&M position. I'm going to ride with Notre Dame and under that I had. Like if he's athletic again and in shape, that's encouraging.
There has been with Connor Wegman a desire, if you were rooting for him to be successful, but there's been a desire to see him tighten it up, right?
Yeah, I think so. A little beat spot is necessary.
And just everything, let's
in that system because they're gonna run the quarterback some.
Yes, yeah. So that
kid rip the kid. Go back and find the game day clip and tell me that's how you want your starting quarterback to look.
Yeah, Willie Fritz,
it's like Michelangelo chiseled him out of marble.
Willie Fritz passed that along across my desk.
Like if he had replaced Chip on the show, we would be getting a lot of crap about how we all are built the same.
Hey, how about this one? Speaking of,
oh, that's fair. Luka, the basketball player, is also built similar. That's true.
If Cover 3, this was at 10:46 a.m. So before we got started, if Cover 3 did a hot dog eating contest, who wins?
I mean, me.
Probably Tom.
Think so?
I don't know. The Chip's got that. Like the skinny guys are a little deceptive when it comes to. They got that metabolism. Like that hot dog might be burnt to shit by the time it even reaches Chip's stomach. It might be gone.
So we were at 4th of July and they showed the women's contest first. And like, we all agreed that none of us could beat any of the men and like be on the top 5. But I think in the women, it was like, you had to eat 11 in whatever the time limit was. Like, I think I could be on the leaderboard. I would throw up afterwards if I actually trained for it, you know.
I had a
maybe.
Are we dunking the dogs in water, or are we just raw dogging them, literally?
I think everybody should play by the same rules. Right. So like they're dunking everything.
See, that's cheating.
Yeah, I'd rather raw dog it.
I mean, we got all. Remember how mad everybody got? Everybody got all mad at Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, and Barry Bonds for taking steroids, yet they laud Joey Chestnut for dunking that hot dog in water. It's a double standard, and I'm sick of it.
I have
the Chestnut does do it in front of everybody, and Bonds was like, you know, like if Bonds is not like you know, outer thigh in the on deck circle.
He might have.
What everyone thinks about what it's like to eat the hot dogs, and after a conversation with Mr. Joseph Chestnut, I would say I am far more horrified about what happens in the 8 to 12 hours after.
Yeah, I could see that.
The way that your body has to respond. Like, I think if I remember this correctly, he said, because I was like, oh, what do you, just classic case. Like, he's like a celebrity at a college football playoff game. A whole bunch of people are just standing around and peppering him with questions. Oh, so what do you do? Do you just not eat for the rest of the day? And he's like, no, actually, if you don't eat another meal, your body's metabolism will get all out of whack. So you have to like continue to feed the beast to just keep the machine churning so you can get it all out. Yuck. No, thank you on that one. I like this one from Jerry. The conversation in the tailgate was what coaches would win. Said the biggest guy doesn't always win the hot dog contest. I'll take Mike Gundy. You know?
Biggest hair, though. Did you see how he looks in the video game?
Yes. To be fair, he let that thing did get poofy in the last couple of years. You know, he's let that thing get poofy. Mike in the tailgate wants to put Sam Pittman out there. You know, if Sam Pittman can sit up there, take his shoes off, take his socks off too, then yeah, maybe he might be able to get. He might be able to.
Mark Stoops.
Mark Stoops.
Maybe he is Iowa. Yeah. Bielema, I don't know if you guys saw Bielema when he was in Chicago on Pardon My Take a couple weeks ago. So he's slimming down a little bit.
Okay. Listen.
Oh.
Whatever. Still finishing top 3. There's a desire to win. You can expand that thing in a heartbeat. Okay. Anything else hot dog or Big 12 related before we get out of here?
If it's a pizza thin crust, I will win.
Oh. I can do a large pizza.
What is?
Like, give me inches. I don't want size. Like sizes are different.
What is Quantrell mad about in the chat? Is South Carolina related? Typically, but he.
No.
But like you talking like 14-inch, 16-inch?
Yeah, probably 14.
You ain't shit. Come on, man. Get your skinny ass out of here, boy. I'm talking to a Chicago guy. 14-inch. I had that for breakfast, bro.
Let's go. All right. Thursday. It is the big old bag of mail. We are excited to hear from you. Among the questions that will be leading our conversation tomorrow, I always like to go ahead and just drop this one out so that you and also the listeners can think about it. Who are the most, quote, born on third base coaches in college football? We've got the famous born on third base quote that is the spark here. But the allegation is that he is not the only coach who was born on third base. Who are the most born on third base coaches in college football? We'll have a lot of fun with that and so much more. Maybe even some Cover 3 listener trivia, plus reaction to what we hear from Deion Sanders, from Lance Leipold, from Mike Gundy, from Sonny Dykes, Kyle Whittingham, Rich Rodriguez, and so much more. And you can follow him on Twitter at Tom Fernelli. You can follow him at Bud Elliott 3. Follow me at Chip_Patterson. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.